my mother has a lot of interest in music, and she wanted me to able to have a career where I can, be in control of what I want to do. And so she started me on the piano, and then she put me into the school system in Taiwan. They had a regular elementary school, but attached to it is a special program for gifted musical students. And it's kind of set up like a conservatory, model after the Paris Conservatory. And so, in addition to the regular normal school, like Chinese and whatever history that we have to study, we were given theory classes, let's see, ear training, sightseeing classes every day. Instead of gym, we have ballet. We were required to learn another instrument. So there was a comprehensive training that we had. I think that's very similar to the Russian and the European training. So in order to get into this school, they actually test if you're actually gifted. To do that, they test your listening skills. So they will ask you which pitch is higher, and ask you to sing back the melody. And and this is, we were going to first grade. We're being tested as a first graders. So there was a big emphasis on musicianship as a whole. Um, you know, Getting comprehensive theory classes every day, comprehensive ear training classes. It's just part of the pieces that you put the puzzle together that makes a whole musician.
How does that affect the way you are as a musician? Looking back, all that foundation that you laid in early years.
Well, it's quite important because my student would say, "Well, Miss Brenda, how do you know that I played a wrong note?" Well, I can tell you after all these sightseeing and all these you just know you can hear a wrong note in a chord. The difference between a minor six or a major four. This difference with one note, I can see. Oh, that's a different chord, right? So um, it is very important, I think, for ears to be developed where you can hear the minute differences between sounds. Not just only with pitch, but also with quality of tones. When we're talking about a higher level of performance, you want to have color, you want to have shimmer, and you want to have glitter. But if you don't have that kind of training with your ears, you're not listening to the minute details, and you're not listening to the differences between the sound.
You were educated in Taiwan for your early years,
Mhm.
but then you came here. Did you continue that kind of a training? Do you have a kind of a comparison to systems?
So in Taiwan, my days were very regimented. Um, I get on bus at 6:50. I go to school. It's a very Japanese system. You do your cleaning. You participate in making food in school, and you do your practicing. It was supervised practicing. Everybody practice at the same time. Everybody, have classes together. And then by the time I get home, it was 6 o'clock at night, and I practice 2 more hours of piano with my mother. And then I go to sleep and I start over again the next day. So when I came to the United States, all that went away. It's good and bad. So if you have an interest in something, you can practice 6, 7 hours of piano a day. You don't have to spread yourself into so many different subjects, which is great. But on the other hand, unless you go out and seek those missing pieces and put it together yourself, you are in charge of your own personal education. I think here more, you have freedom to choose, but if you don't know what you don't know, then it is a problem. I was 9 years old when we immigrated to Chicago. I hadn't had the exposure of great piano playing in Taiwan. Um, there weren't any recordings or concerts that we can go to. So when I arrived in the United States, it was like a whole new world for me. Going to the library to able to check out the LPs, later CDs of great recordings of Arthur Rubinstein, Horowitz, Argerich, Ashkenazi, Polini, and all these great players that I never knew when I was doing my, you know, scheduled things in Taiwan, that I'm getting all the great ear training, but I wasn't getting exposure, and I wasn't listening to great music.
Mm.
So you do need to be very disciplined here. Um, my mother knew that I needed help, and so I was in this music center. It's now called the Music Institute of Chicago, and they don't have classes per se, but if you request, then there will be a teacher that's willing to help you. It's more like a small group, of a select students get together to study a certain topic for that short amount of period of time. So it's great that you get that kind of attention, but you have to request it, and everything has to come together. The teacher has to have time. We have to have enough students to become a group. So it's more like a um, self scheduled thing here.
What inspired you to pick up a professional music career? It's not easy. Do you have people or do you have moments that you realized this is your calling in life?
My mother wanted a better life for me than she had. Um, there weren't a lot of options when she was growing up. So she wanted to be a teacher. So she went to a teacher's college, and where she was exposed and learned piano, violin, um, and she knew that she loved the music so much. She wanted to become a musician, but it was too late for her. She was what 18, 19 when she went to college, and so she wanted to start me young. Both myself and my sister both started pretty young, and she knew that the time that's devoted to learning an instrument, you cannot do it alone. You have to have support group behind you, and so she was there. She was my first teacher. She was my practice monitor. She was there teaching me and setting goals for me in the beginning. So um, that was something that I just, when was young, I knew this is something I was going to do. It's like my mom was with me, and I was happy doing piano. And when I came to United States, I struggled a little bit when I first came here because of the lack of exposure. I was a little confused. I wanted to be like Argerich. I wanted to be like Arthur Rubinstein. Um, but there was a gap. There gap in knowledge. The desire was there, and I want to say I was musical, and I had really fast fingers, and I know how to play the instrument, but I do not know how to play the music. I did not have the understanding of how certain thing is done for Mozart, or how certain things done in Beethoven, even though I understand the theory behind it. Um, it was not until I met Mr. Del Rosario, Emilio Del Rosario, that all came together. When I got into his studio, he started from beginning with me, you know, teach me the basics, the fingerings for each of the scales that you just have to know by heart, chords, fingering, arpeggio, all that. Discipline to be accurate all the time, not just 90% of the time, all the time. Um, just able to catch mistakes consistently, not letting me go if I made a mistake. So that standard was really high. Um, and he provided structure for me. He explained how the phrases are done in certain way, traditionally, and why. And then he just kind of point me to the right direction and give me the tools I need to get to where I wanted to go. He gave me the basic foundation, and then he opened the sky and let me fly. I want to say, so I'm forever grateful for him.
Could you share a bit about your calling in teaching?
Well, it is very satisfying, to take someone who has no experience, um, perhaps really young and didn't play piano at all, uh, from like a blank canvas, to, few years later, 12 years later, a decade later, to performing with an orchestra. Um, it's just a good feeling that I can do something to help someone to find joy and share that joy with other people. So this is how I feel, and I love kids and I love helping people. Basic foundation has to be strong, and that's just I give them skill exercises like in addition to basic ones like Hannon and Schmidt, um, a stamina, finger stamina, able to play trills for a longer period of time. So I set that foundation, and then the next step is uh, get them up, bump them up to etudes. And etudes, starting with easier ones by Muscale, and then move on to Chopin and Liszt etudes. I like to get students moving fast, so I don't want to sit in method books when they're young for a long period of time. They start method books as a way of learning to read and count and all that. But once that stage is secure, I show them Bach, I show them Mozart almost as fast as, immediately if possible. You have to learn your basics before you can have fun. If they see other kids are doing what they're doing, and there's different age group, and they're moving on, and you always wanted to put somebody, a little bit more older, more experienced. Look, if you do this will happen. You'll be able to play at this hall. You'll be able to play with that orchestra. So you do want to show them the way. Um, a lot of times, practicing by yourself is a very lonely activity, and if you can show that at the end of it, you perform on stage, you have opportunity to travel to perform, and it's a worthwhile endeavor. And so I do put kids into events, like especially with beginners, low pressure events, competitions, to encourage them, and just even getting a participation medal, ribbons. Um, those are little nuggets that they can collect, and each nugget get bigger and bigger, and become their the owner of their learning.
How do you teach students how to practice? And also, how do you motivate students to practice?
There's two parts to this, right? Consistency, right? It, we need to model consistency during lessons. So when students come for lessons, we start with the technique, the skills, right? And I set the standard up here, and every time you had to hit that standard. Okay, so um, they know what I'm asking for, and they have to practice every week to get to that standard. So the consistency is very important. Um, when it doesn't happen, then I talk to the students and then provide solutions. So yeah, okay, so you had, well, 5 exams this week. Okay, I understand you didn't practice that much. So, but next week you don't have any. So would you able to do two of these instead? You know, and so it's like if I give in a little bit, then they will work harder next week. Usually that's where the direction goes. The second part is that you want to motivate them so that I don't need to ask them to work hard. You know, so if they have a taste of success, even in a small competition, they want a little bit more of that. And each time they succeed, they know what it takes to get to that point. And the next competition is going to be a little bit bigger, and they know I need to put in a little bit more recitals. So during COVID, the pandemic, we really cannot get together and perform for each other. Before, we were doing practically every week. We have studio recital, and everyone play for each other. Um, so what I required students is to submit a video recording of themselves every 2 weeks. Um, it's you'll be surprised to see like they hear themselves, they record themselves, they hear themselves, and they discover that there are things that they don't like about themselves in terms of their playing. So uh, I see a huge growth. Every time they do a recording, they submit it, and next day I see them for a lesson. There's a growth there. I try to balance um, motivated way, the hard, the competition driven, and the nice self-pressed process of recording yourself. And I try to balance it so that the kids can, well, the bottom line is I want them to get better.
What has been the most rewarding experience for you all these years of teaching students?
I get notes from my students thanking me when they are older. Um, I teach them until they are 18, go off to college, and then once in a while I get a card in the mail thanking me. My student's a doctor and thanking me, teaching him how to play Rachmaninoff and still plays. Um, Last week, I had a parent send me a YouTube recording, composed a piece as a present to his father, as his father's birthday. So he composed a duet with his brother, and it was not, not Mozart or Beethoven, but it was very touching, so that it's very rewarding for me to see that music, the knowledge I give, had become something important in their lives, and then they were able to give it to um, whoever as a gift. So that was very nice. And of course, it's always proud as a teacher to see student. I have a couple of students I play with Chicago Symphony Orchestra. That makes me feel from nothing to that is quite an accomplishment, I think, and that's very satisfying in a different way. Very lucky to have the education I had, with my mother and Del Rosario, and later on with college professors like Russell Sherman. Um, so I'd like to pass it on